Hello friends and welcome to my channel. Today begins the Fort Worth Fabric Studio mystery quilt, Matters of the Heart. It's their Valentine mystery quilt, and today we're going to cut some fabrics and we're going to sew a block or two or four. So we've got a lot to do, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through all the cutting instructions for Matters of the Heart. I'm really excited about this sew along. It's been a little bit since we started a Fort Worth Fabric Studio sew along, so excited to get started. All right, so I'm going to go through these rather quickly so we can get on to the sewing. So the first thing you're going to want to cut is you're going to want to cut 8 5.5-inch squares from your background. This is all the background fabrics. The next thing you want to cut is you're going to want to cut 16 3.5-inch squares. Then you're going to want to cut 2 20.5-inch by 2.5-inch strips or rectangles, these guys here. And then you're going to want to cut 2 24.5-inch by 2.5-inch rectangles, so basically strips. And then you're going to have 5 2.5-inch strips that they haven't told us to cut any differently other than just strips. So I'm assuming these are probably going to be for borders or something down the road. So that's all of your white pieces. So I'm going to fold these up, get them out of the way for a minute. So that's the background fabric. Now, I kind of consider this another background fabric too, which they call it that too. So it's the Riley Pink, okay? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut, and make sure you cut them in order of what they tell you so you have enough fabric, 16 8.5-inch squares. And then after that, you're going to cut 8 3.5-inch squares from the leftover from this, and then 8 more from another strip of 3.5 inches. So what I went ahead and did is I think I got 10 or 12 from the strip, the 3.5-inch strip. So I cut all those, and then I cut the remainder from the excess of these. It's another way of doing it. They come out the same, but that way the 3.5-inch strip, you know, I used it all instead of leaving a bit. All right, so the next thing I cut is 64, yes, 64 2.5-inch squares, and that you're going to cut from 2.5-inch strips. So that will be the next part. So the next fabric we're going to cut is the red mane, which is this floral fabric. So you're going to cut 32 of these 6.5 by 3.5-inch rectangles, and then from that same fabric you're going to cut 4 10.5 by 5.5-inch rectangles. So that's that fabric. The next two fabrics we're going to cut are D and E, which is the cream X's and O's and the cream circle dots. So there's your X's and O's, there's your circle dots, and these are all 3.5-inch squares. So you're going to cut 8 of those and 8 of these. And my piles got all messed up. I'll have to fix them. So after that, you're going to grab your red sprinkle fabric, which is kind of a blender. So it's this one right here. And you're going to cut 4 8.5-inch squares. And then after that, we're going to cut more 8.5-inch squares from our blush scattered hearts, which is this pretty pink one here. And then from our red X's and O's. So those are 6 each, 6 of those 8.5-inch squares. So 4 of these guys and 6 of each of these ones. Okay, so from fabric I, the red circle dots, you're going to cut 4 10.5 by 5.5-inch rectangles. If you remember, we cut that out of those. So those are probably going to play together. And then fabric J, which is your binding, this cute stripy stripe. I love a stripe binding, so I'm super excited about that. You're going to cut 6 2.5-inch by width of fabric strips for your binding, or whatever size you like. I prefer a 2 1/4, so that's what I cut. But if you like 2.5 or whatever size you like, cut 6 of those strips. Okay, so that's all of the fabric, and what I wanted to show you really quick is how much we had left of everything, because I always get that question if there was some leftover. So here's all the leftover I had from the white background. Quite a bit, so if you make a little mistake. The pink, I didn't have much left at all, less than a 2.5-inch strip. So if you make a mistake on that, you might be in a little bit of trouble. Here's some of the red mane that I had left. The X's and O's, there was plenty of that left. Some of the stripe, so I had more than a 2.5-inch strip left. So if you like a little bit of a wider binding, I think you'll have plenty, like a 2 3/4. The red sprinkles, they're calling it. There's not much left of that. There's still a good amount of the red circle. Here's what's left of the cream X's and O's, the circle with the cream, and then a good amount of this pink blush, because we have this piece and this piece, which is folded up. So quite a bit of fabric left over, but a few of those pieces, like that pink background, very, very little. That's all I had for the pink background. So be careful on that one. But other than that, I think you've got plenty of fabric here to get your things cut out. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put all this away, and we're going to grab our fabrics for week 1, because that's this week, and we're going to start working on the change of heart block. So I'm going to put all this stuff away, and then we'll get started. Okay, really quick, we'll go through what you need for this week. You'll need your B fabrics, 16 of the 3.5 inch squares, which is the light pink, and then 64 2.5 inch squares. So we're going to have quite a bit of sewing in front of us here. We're making 4 blocks this week. They're all the same, but it's a lot of work. So we need 32 of the C 6.5 by 3.5 inch rectangles, which is the red main. We need 8 of the 3.5 inch squares of both D and E. So that's these 2 fabrics here. So we're going to use all these fabrics this week, and we're going to make 4 blocks. So I'm going to show you how to put one together, and I'm going to let you do the other 3 by yourself, but you're in for a little bit of sewing. It's going to take us a little bit here. Okay, so the first thing we have to do to make the change of heart block is we need to add onto the 32, yes, 32, because we are making 4 blocks, although we're only making 1 block together, so we're only having to do 8 right now. But if you want to do them all at the same time, add on to all 32 the 64 2.5 inch squares. So we're going to start by adding 1 to this side. We're going to sew from the bottom left to the top there, and then we will fold that, well, not fold it, but we will trim it away and press it back, and then we'll add the other one to the right hand side and do the same thing. So it'll end up looking like that, sort of like a flying geese. A little bit, not as messy though. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this to the left hand side, and for 1 block you need 8, but for all the blocks you need 32. So if you decide to do all 32 at once, you got a lot of sewing in front of you. But we'll just do 1 block together today. So you can draw your line corner to corner if you like. I've got the seam guide tape on my machine, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it with that. And let me turn my iron on here. And I'm going to trim this 1/4 inch away towards the outside of the rectangle. And then we're going to press this out. And I'm just going to finger press it first. Get my iron board. We're going to press this out away from the rectangle. That'll create the first corner. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing, but to the opposite corner. So I'm going to sew from the top left now to the bottom right. And once this is done, it'll go that way. Okay. Okay, now that I've sewn that one, I'm going to cut that one 1/4 inch away from the line that we sewed. And then I'm going to press that one. Grab my iron. All right, so after you've made 8 of these, then we can start adding on the lower pieces. So the next step that we need to do to the lower left for each block, so this is per block, you're going to add one of the pink, which is the same pink as up here, to the lower left. So we're going to sew from the top left to the bottom right, and it's going to end up being on the lower left of your heart block. So we're going to make 4 of those per block, or 16 altogether. And then on the other side, I've got one of these sewn already, we're going to add our prints. Now there's 2 different prints. There's your hearts and then the circles. So I've already added one of those. So you're going to have 2 of these per block and 2 of these per block. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and add this one. And this one's going to be added to the left, and the prints are going to be added to the right. Okay. So just make sure you pay close attention to that. All the solids to the left, the prints to the right. You don't want to sew them on the wrong way. You'll have a lot of ripping to do if you do. I do recommend, though, before you trim them away, to make sure that they are going the correct direction, because once you've cut them, you can't go back, and there's not enough fabric to make more. So, fair warning. Okay, so before I trim this, I'm just going to double check. Yep, that's going the correct direction. So now the one with the print, I'm going to sew on the opposite direction, so when we put these together, it looks like a heart. So the prints start in the top right towards the bottom left. And again, I'm going to check this against here. We have a heart. Okay, so now I'm going to trim this and this one away 1/4 inch, and then we'll press them. That one. Okay, so now we will press these. All right, so after you've made these pieces, you're gonna put those 2 together to make a heart. And with the other print, you're gonna do the same thing, put those 2 together. All of the solid pinks should be on your left, the prints should be on your right. So we're just gonna join these together to make our hearts. This is a pretty simple block. There's just a lot of pieces with the 64 2.5 inch squares. So it's probably going to take you a little bit. It's going to take me a bit. It might take you less time than it takes me because I'm a little bit OCD with my pressing, but that's just my problem. But it will take you a little bit of time to get all 64 little squares sewn on, and then go back and do the bottom squares. But we're going to get these cute heart blocks as a reward. Okay, so now I'm just going to press these think you can press them to one side. They're not super bulky. I think I'm just going to press them all to the same side just to keep them kind of the same. I'm going to press them all towards the solid pink side. Okay. Now we can build our rows to make the block. So the first heart in this block on the top left is going to go up. The next heart is going to turn. And then I've already made my bottom row, but you're going to take this one and turn it this way. And then you're going to take the next one and turn it this way. So you're just going to keep turning the hearts until you go all the way around. And you should see a diamond pattern in the center where the prints all join together. So let me put these two together and then we can put the rows together. And that's it. That's the whole block. It's a simple block. It's just a lot of pieces and there's 4 blocks to make. So it's going to take you a little bit of time just for that reason. Very beginner friendly block because there's not a lot of seams to match up here, so that's a good thing too. Okay. Now I pressed this bottom row towards the circle, so I'm going to press it towards the circle up here as well. So my rows nest really well. Grab my ironing board, give this a press, and then we'll put the whole block together. Okay, there we go. Now we can put this whole block together. So I'm just going to flip this on top here. Make sure these nest in the center so you get that nice diamond pattern with your prints. Okay, let's take a look at our block here. All right, there we go. There's our block. They met nicely right there in the center. I've got my diamond in the center between all of my hearts. I'm going to go ahead and give this a press, and then I'm going to go finish all 3 of the rest of my blocks, and then I'll come back and I'll show you all of them done and tell you about how long it took me to make them. Okay, well, I have all 4 of my blocks done. Here they are. They all look the same, so here's the other 2. So altogether, took a little while. It probably took me, and I could have been going slow, I'm not sure, but it probably took me close to 2 hours. Yeah, I think it was about 2 hours to do all these. So I think I was going a little bit slow to make sure I sewed the these ones the opposite direction, the parts of the heart, because I was really afraid I was going to sew them all the same way and screw everything up. So I went slower than I usually did, but it took me about 2 hours to get all of these done. So it's going to take you a little bit of time. That's okay. Well, maybe not you. Maybe you'll sew faster than I did, but they came out really, really cute. And I really like that because I know we've done some Valentine quilts in the past with Fort Worth, but this one was really different so far. So I'm really excited about it. I like that the hearts are a little bit different way we've put things together. So that's a lot of fun. I really look forward to next week, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you again soon.